$27,400. That's not your rent, that's not your car, that's not inflation. That's how much money your lack of sleep is quietly stealing from you. And before you roll your eyes and think, yeah, sleep matters, wait. This isn't about feeling tired. This isn't about coffee, and it's definitely not about being lazy. This is about how being slightly sleep-deprived, just 1 hour short, turns your brain into a worse decision-making machine every single day. You still work hard, you still show up, you just earn less. You negotiate worse, you choose the wrong opportunities, you miss things you would have caught if your brain was fully online. And the scariest part? You don't feel it happening. Because sleep debt doesn't hurt like debt. It feels normal. Let's talk about what sleep debt actually means and why it's invisible. Here's the thing most people get wrong about sleep debt. They think it's like being exhausted after an all-nighter, red eyes, heavy head, obvious damage. But sleep debt doesn't work like that. It works like a bank overdraft you never check. If your body needs 8 hours and you give it 7, nothing explodes. You feel fine. A little slower maybe, a little more annoyed. So you do it again and again and again. Each night you're borrowing a small amount of mental sharpness, focus, emotional control, pattern recognition, and your brain keeps the bill. The problem is, unlike money, there's no notification that says you are now operating at 92% capacity. You just think this is who you are now. This is why high-functioning people are the most dangerous sleep debt carriers. They're productive enough to survive, but not sharp enough to excel. And that's where the money starts leaking. Because once your brain is running on low bandwidth, income becomes the first casualty. Now let's talk about how sleep debt quietly destroys your earning power. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because sleep debt doesn't take money from you directly, it changes the way you think. When you're underslept, your brain starts prioritizing short-term relief over long-term gain. You avoid hard conversations, you delay uncomfortable decisions, you go with the safe option instead of the smart one. That's decision fatigue. Now add reduced working memory. You hold fewer variables in your head at once. That means worse planning, sloppier analysis, missing second-order effects. In simple terms, you become slower at connecting dots. And income is just dot connecting. Negotiations suffer because you settle faster. Career moves suffer because you underestimate yourself. Investments suffer because you react emotionally instead of logically. You're still smart, you're just running a heavier operating system on less RAM. And here's the brutal part. Effort doesn't fix this. You can't grind your way out of a tired brain, which is why sleep debt doesn't just lower your performance, it flattens your trajectory. Now let's do the math, because once you see the numbers, you can't unsee them. Let's do the math. This is where it gets ugly. Imagine you're earning $50,000 a year. Nothing crazy, solid, respectable income. Now assume sleep debt reduces your effective performance by just 5%. Not 20, not dramatic, 5. That's $2,500 in lost value. But it doesn't show up as a pay cut. It shows up as the raise you didn't ask for. The promotion that went to someone else, the side project you were too mentally drained to finish. Now stretch that over 10 years. That's $25,000. And that's the conservative version, because performance loss compounds. Miss one good opportunity, and you miss the opportunities that would have followed it. Lower confidence leads to lower risk-taking. Lower risk-taking leads to slower income growth. This is how sleep debt quietly turns into $27,400. Not stolen in one dramatic moment, dripped away, year after year, decision by decision. And the worst part? You blame yourself. You think you're undisciplined or unlucky or just not wired like those successful people. But what if the problem wasn't you? What if it was just a tired brain making slightly worse choices for years? Let me show you what this looks like in real life, because this story is going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Picture someone smart, reliable, hardworking. They wake up tired but functional. Coffee fixes it, mostly. They do their job well enough to never get fired, but not well enough to stand out. When a new opportunity comes up, they think, I'll look into it later. Later never comes.
After work, their brain feels heavy, so instead of learning a new skill or building something on the side, they scroll. Not because they're lazy, because they're depleted. Weeks turn into years. Someone else, with the same talent but a sharper brain, asks for a raise, applies for the role, starts the side project, makes the move. And from the outside, it looks like confidence or ambition or luck. But underneath, it's energy, mental energy. Sleep debt doesn't ruin lives dramatically. It creates quiet underperformance, and quiet underperformance is invisible even to the person living it. You don't think, I'm losing money because I'm tired. You think, this is just how my life turned out. And that belief is dangerous, because once you accept that story, you stop pushing back. Now here's where things get even twisted, because the culture around you is actually encouraging this damage. Let's talk about why hustle culture is lying to you. Hustle culture loves one lie more than any other. If you want more, just work harder. It sounds noble, it sounds disciplined, and it completely ignores how the human brain works. Because the people winning aren't working the most hours, they're making the best decisions. And decision quality collapses without sleep. This is the irony, because the more ambitious you are, the more likely you are to sacrifice sleep. Late nights, early mornings, I'll catch up on the weekend. But sleep doesn't work like a savings account. It works like interest. Miss a little now, pay a lot later. This is why two people can work the same hours with the same skills and end up in completely different financial places. One is rested, one is not. Sleep isn't weakness, it's leverage. It's the thing that lets you see opportunities before others do. The thing that gives you patience in negotiations and clarity under pressure. And once you understand that, the question isn't, how do I grind harder? It's, how do I stop sabotaging my own brain? So let's get practical. How do you actually reverse sleep debt without becoming a monk or deleting your life? First, forget the fantasy version of perfect sleep. You don't need ice baths, sleep trackers, or a $5,000 mattress. You need consistency. Start with one boring rule. Pick a sleep and wake time you can keep 5 days a week. Not 7, 5. That alone fixes more damage than most supplements ever will. Second, protect the last hour before bed like it's paid work. Because it is. Dim lights, fewer screens, lower stimulation. You're not relaxing if your brain is still scrolling for dopamine. Finally, understand this. Sleep debt is reversible, faster than financial debt actually. A few weeks of real rest can restore clarity you forgot you ever had. You don't need to change who you are, you just need to give your brain the conditions to perform. Which brings us back to that number, $27,400. Because once you see sleep as a financial decision, everything changes. Let's close this loop. $27,400 isn't just a number, it's the cost of thinking you were fine when you weren't. It's the raises not asked for, the risks not taken, the clarity you never realized you were missing. And the uncomfortable truth is that most people will never fix this problem, not because they can't, but because being tired feels normal. But once you know what sleep debt actually costs, you don't get to unknow it. This isn't about sleeping more to feel better, it's about sleeping enough to think better. And better thinking changes everything. Income, confidence, trajectory. So tonight, when you're tempted to steal one more hour from sleep, remember what you're actually trading it for. Not productivity, not success, but another small payment towards a debt that compounds quietly. And now that you see it, you can finally stop paying it.